in the manufacturing sector of India in the post-COVID world. We have friends from Italy linked, from India, from China, and we can have a sharing of experience that will help to understand how we shall move in this uncharted water and during this uncertain period. And we will have the honor to have with us also the representative of the Italian embassy in India. We will have our ambassador Vincenzo De Luca, which will join us soon. And but I would like to briefly introduce the panelists of today's event, starting from our colleague in Milan, our senior, or in Milan office, our senior associate, Veronica Gianola, which will be the moderator of today's discussion. We will have also Mr. Paolo Ceriati, Operation Director of Casappa India, as well Mrs. Divya Hazra, who is the legal advisor for the India desk of D'Andrea & Partners Legal Counsel. Mr. Claudio Maffioletti, it's a pleasure to have you again with us, the CEO of the Indo-Italian Chamber of Commerce and Industries. And we will have also Mr. Pelle, Managing Director of Ferrero India. It's a great pleasure also to have among each other Gaia Rizzi, which is our guru of communication that could put us together this webinar. And as you can see, our group pay much attention of the gender equalities, and as one of the principles put it out by the European Parliament in the past days. And now, without further take note, I will give the words to our senior associate, Veronica Gianola, to start the discussion. When the ambassador will join us, he just asked me that he's finishing a meeting with the Prime Minister Modi Secretariat in order to arrange the upcoming B2B meeting between vis-a-vis online meeting between our Prime Minister Conte and Premier Modi. Thank you to all of you. I'm going to be here listening this interesting panel. In the meantime, Veronica, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Carlo. Thank you to our panelists for joining us today, and to the audience. I would like to start briefly, before going to the panel discussion, with a short introduction of our company in order to offer you a better understanding of who we are and the services that we provide. We are DP Group. Our mission is to be present in every business capital of the world in order to make the global business environment better through our work. Our group has been founded by two partners, Mr. Carlo D'Andrea and Mr. Matteo Giambin, and the group is made up of 4 companies. One is D'Andrea & Partners Legal Counsel. Then we have PHC Advisory Tax and Accounting, EASTANT Communication and Events, and Chance and Better. Focusing a little bit shortly on D'Andrea & Partners Legal Counsel, we are a consolidated business in the international legal profession and a point of reference for the companies that want to enter successfully the global market. Founded by Mr. Carlo D'Andrea and Matteo Giambin, now the firm is made up of professionals coming from different parts of the globe, of the world, in order to provide services in different languages, as well as to better approach all the clients' needs. We are present in different countries. We are in China, in India, in Vietnam, in Italy, in Dubai, and we also have a Russia desk. The main practice areas are corporate and commercial law, legal compliance, M&A, environmental law compliance, legal translation, labor law, IPR, FDI and ODI, and dispute resolution. So we are available to assist our clients under all these areas. Here you can see our offices. We are in China, as I said, in Shanghai, Nanjing, and Chongqing, in Italy, in Pescara and Milan, in India, in Pune, Vietnam, Hanoi, and Ho Chi Minh City, and Dubai. You are free, if you would like to follow us on our social media, on YouTube, on Facebook, on VK, Twitter, Weibo, and LinkedIn. So now I would like to start the panel discussion. Thanks again for joining us today. We will share also all the precious points and points of views on the future of investments in the manufacturing sector of India in the post-COVID world. We are sorry that Mr. Nicola Dariol today was unable to join due to unexpected events, but we hope to have opportunities of having him with us in the future. I will start with Mr. Paolo.
Veronica, I can see that our ambassador and friends.
I will leave the floor.
He's here. Thank you, Vincenzo. Great to see you.
Welcome, welcome, Ambassador.
It's a pleasure. Younger and younger every time I see you. It's a pleasure. Please, we were just doing the welcoming. You arrived in the right moment. The floor is yours, dear Enzo.
Thank you, Carlo, and a very warm greeting to all the participants to this webinar. The second one we organized with the DP group, and I'm so happy to have the opportunity to stay with you and discuss with you. Unfortunately, I have to stay here only for my speech, because after that we have another webinar. Yesterday we have a CEO forum with 80 CEO from Italy and from India. Was the first digital CEO forum, high-level dialogue on economic collaboration between Italy and India. It's a very important moment because we are promoting more investment here, more trade, also in a period that is difficult for Italy, for India, for COVID. But we are thinking about our presence here in India and investment from India to Italy in a long-term perspective, as I told you last time. Of course, now we are preparing a further instrument to support our companies. It's a very important moment. I think this is the momentum for Italian companies to invest here in India, because there is a strategic consideration about the diversification of a global value chain in this moment all over the world. And we had also a very important summit last July between European Union and India, where the partnership was further strengthened, and also clear priorities were presented in this summit. The same for Italy. We work on green economy, on energy transition, on advanced manufacturing, that is the theme of the today webinar, and also food processing. Also there, we have machine and technology from Italy that will be very useful for an upgrading of the technology here in India. So I think this is the best period to think about investment from Italian companies here in India. We have further instruments, as I told you before. We have this important credit line provided by SACE, that is the push strategy, a very appealing credit line with an interest rate less than the market interest rate at the long-term return. We have also further instrument we are working on, also in preparation of the bilateral summit next week. That will be signed, the agreement will be signed by Cassa Depositi e Prestiti, the Italian Investment Bank, with the National Indian Investment Fund, NIIF. It will be a further instrument to support Italian companies here in India. We have also created a digital platform we are the only country with India. We have this platform that is the opportunity for our company to have matchmaking with the Indian partners and Indian companies. Digital platform has been signed between Italian Trade Agency and Invest India. And of course, we are following very closely the negotiation for a further trade agreement between European Union and India. Now the situation is still in a preliminary phase, but I think there is a perspective of more trade and more investment from Italy and from Europe to India. I mentioned before the priority sector. On green economy, we have important investment from Italy to India in renewable energy, in the gas, in the hydrogen sector, and we work also on recycle of plastic in the green economy and sustainable technology for machinery. Food processing, the same. We are working with the food park here in India to promote the sort of technology share with the Indian partners. We are working also on infrastructure with a focus on railway, and of course all the Make in India sector, that is our manufacturing sector, is very active in the bilateral trade. So as Italian system in India, we are very well equipped with our embassy, the Consulate General in Mumbai, the Consulate General in Kolkata, the Italian Trade Agency that is integrated in our embassy here in Delhi and in the Consulate General in Mumbai. The Indo-Italian Chamber of Commerce, one of the most effective in the world, that has been since a long time set up in Mumbai. So we have a very close relation with SACE Siemens in Mumbai and in Hong Kong. So I think we have all the conditions to help our companies to come here in India, to invest in India, and to have more export to India. We are working very hard also in this COVID time with the digital platform, with our webinar, with our video meeting with all the Italian companies here in India, but also from Italy, several webinars, several video meetings, and I'm so happy that also Carlo D'Andrea and this group is working very hard to help our companies to provide services and to support the business, the Italian business here in India. We will have further events in the coming weeks and months. We'll keep in touch and we'll be happy to have other opportunity with you to discuss about these opportunities of investment and presence of Italian companies here in India. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, dear Ambassador. It's always great to see the positivities that you bring in every of your speech, and the knowledge and the hard working that all the Italian system is doing in order to promote the trade relationship, and not only that, between Italy and India. We are trying now to understand better from the companies that they are facing the challenge on the territory, as well as company that they are coming to invest, because yes, we were discussing that this is the second time, Mr. De Luca, and we have here Mr. Ceriati, that is one of the panelists. You remember on the previous webinar, he said we are planning to invest, and now they will tell you good news because they are expanding their investment. But I will not tell anything else. I will give the word to Veronica, which will lead the panel. Please feel free to say goodbye when you have to leave. We understand the institutional needs, but till the moment we are happy that you had time to share some information from New Delhi. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Carlo. Thank you, everybody. I will stay here for a few minutes, and I have to connect to the next webinar. Thank you. Thank you.
Grazie. Please, Veronica.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, Carlo. So now I would like to go back and start with our panel discussion. I will start with Mr. Paolo Ceriati, who's currently the group's operation director of the company Casappa SPA, which is a leading company producing hydraulic pumps and motors. Casappa has ongoing operations in India, China, USA, France, Germany, Korea, and Brazil. If I miss something, Paolo, as well as the other speakers about the company, please feel free to add anything.
Veronica.
Okay, thank you. As also Carlo just mentioned, we understand that Casappa India recently entered in the market, so in the Indian market. Would you like to share with us which are the business and economic factors that drove Casappa investment in this market?
Sure. First of all, let me say that Casappa is in the Indian market since some years, but so far the volume, the turnover that we have been able to develop is very small. And the reason is simple. So far, we never thought in consideration to have a localized production, and just providing components, product from our headquarters in Italy, we have not been able to develop the right level of competitiveness. Also, China is not an option because due to the tariffs that are applied, also the competition is unfair with the local player. So, why we thought now to develop our business in India? But because India is a very big country, and we think that necessary it will develop in the next year. So this is a great opportunity that we don't want to miss. That's the reason why we finally decide to start our localization project to develop a production plant in India too. India market, at least for Casappa business, is quite different compared to the Chinese one. While in China there are some very important local players that we provide components, in India our main goal are the global OEMs that we have with localized plant. So that's the reason why our strategy to develop our plant, our production in India, is to develop a small plant, but with the same quality level that we have in the headquarters and in all our subsidiaries. Why? Because we want to provide components to our global OEMs that are interested in high quality level. We will start with a limited range of products for sure, but with the same quality level and with the right level of competitiveness. India is an unbelievable market, main difficulty, but even a lot of opportunity. And so that's the reason why we thought that finally it's the moment to start also for Casappa.
Thank you. Thank you for your first sharing of point of view and of experience. I would like also to ask the other panelists if you have any comment or you would like also to share the experience, please feel free to intervene. Now I will pass also to my colleague Mrs. Divya Hazra, who is currently legal advisor for India desk of D'Andrea & Partner Legal Counsel. She has extensive experience in advising several international companies on different aspects of Indian laws, with a focus on cross-border transactions. Divya, under a technical and legal point of view, what are the peculiarities of Indian laws which investors should be aware of while they decide to invest in the manufacturing sector in India?
So to start off, I would say the manufacturing sector of India has always been very interesting, where it, like Paolo mentioned, it comes with its own set of challenges, but it's also extremely opportunistic in the way that there is a lot of demand in India for the products that you will make because of the population that we have. Along with that, the other factors which contribute to the growth of the manufacturing sector in India, I would say, is again the labor costs and the operational costs in terms of setting up operations in India that is relatively low compared to a lot of other parts of the world. And third, I would say, is policy, like Mr. Vincenzo De Luca mentioned, that there are several policies which have been brought into play by the government and by different institutions that are working with the government to ease the market for investors, foreign investors in India. So these factors overall contribute to the growth of the manufacturing sector of India, and there have been extensive growth in the automobile sector, the pharmaceutical sector, and the chemical manufacturing sector. That being said, now essentially when you talk about the foreign direct investment regime in India, so it's relatively open because 100% FDI is permitted in the manufacturing sector of India, which essentially means that you do not require the approval of the government if you are a foreign investor looking to invest in this sector. Now, that being said, this was slightly modified in the month of March, where the government of India recently amended the FDI policy, where it says that any direct or indirect foreign investment from 7 bordering countries of India, which includes China, would require the prior approval of the government of India, no matter what sector. Obviously, I mean, there is a lot of debate which is going on whether this particular legislation really benefits the Indian markets or it doesn't, and how it's going to play out in the future is something which only time can tell. But essentially, as an investor who's looking to invest in the Indian markets, what they need to understand is that if you have a shareholder who's, say, resident in one of these 7 countries, and you are looking to invest in no matter which sector, including the manufacturing sector of India, even though it was 100% open, now you would mandatorily have to take the approval of the government of India. Now, after the FDI regime, I would like to touch upon what is the kind of entity an investor could look to set up in India. The most preferred means is a private limited company. And the reason why a private limited company is the most preferred mechanism is because it's a relatively simple process to set up a private limited company in India. The process can be completed within a period of 2 weeks. And on top of that, it can be 100% foreign owned. The only restriction is that one of the directors of such a company needs to be resident in India. And a private limited company in India can also get tax subsidies, and generally the corporate income tax rate stands at 30% in India, between 25 to 30% in India. And by setting up a company of this form, the corporate income tax can be reduced to 17%. So even from a tax perspective, it is beneficial. Now, this being the overall general investment scenario in India, I think I would like to touch upon certain peculiarities, especially focused on the manufacturing sector of India, which is 1, labor laws, and 2, land. These are both extremely important for any manufacturing enterprise. And essentially, when an investor is investing into the Indian markets, they underestimate these 2 factors, and this sometimes can be complex. And the reason why these 2 topics are particularly complex is 1, because both the land laws and employment laws in India actually date back to a century, and they are tons and millions of laws that you have to comply with. To give you an example of employment laws, there are currently 40 central and 150 state laws which deal with employment legislation. And recently, the government of India has taken steps to combine 29 out of these 40 central laws into 4 labor codes to make the process simple, but we'll have to see how that works out because these laws have still not come into force. But essentially what an investor, the issue that they face is sometimes that they believe they have complied with all labor legislations, but there is something more or something they could have missed out on. So it's important that when you're investing into the Indian markets to be wary of this particular aspect and seek the right advice from a person who's well versed with the local laws. Now, when it comes to land, again, to give you an example of the complexity, a recent study by a think tank in New Delhi showed that in just 8 out of 29 states in India, there were 1,200 laws related to the land, along with 150 federal laws. And most of them dated back to a century. So essentially, this makes the process of acquiring land really complex. But that being said, again, there is a simpler way to go through this, which is there are several governments have set up several special economic zones where essentially it's easier to lease the land directly from the government. So the barrier that you face when it comes to private land deals is simplified. So probably going for a land deal or going for a space in one of these special economic zones could help simplify the process. So with this, I mean, this is an overall picture of the peculiarities of Indian laws that I would like to touch upon, and I would be happy to take on more questions in the Q&A session. Thank you.
Sure, thank you, Divya. So we can say that India is well prepared and ready to welcome new investments from abroad, and is providing also all the tools in order to simplify the access. Let's go now to Mr. Claudio Maffioletti. He is an experienced CEO with a demonstrated history of supporting Italian companies and associations in establishing and developing their presence in the Indian market. He is currently the CEO of the Indo-Italian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So we will have another institutional point of view. And from your observatory, Claudio, would you like to share with us some practical challenges that the Italian investors are currently facing due to the pandemic in the Indian market? How is the Chamber helping these investors in finding solutions to solve these the eventual problems and to face the challenges?
So the main issues related to investments in India have been already highlighted by Divya Hazra very succinctly, which is land availability and labor laws that, rightly enough, sometimes are neglected or not paid enough attention by Italian investors. But in principle, whenever there is process of approach by an Italian company to the Indian market, so typically one Italian company, as Mr. Ceriati also pointed out, decides to have a phased approach to the Indian market. First, they have to know how it works. They start producing probably in collaboration with local partners, and then when they see and they get acquainted with the way of working, with the way manufacturing happens in India, with all the various implications, labor related, cultural related, they decide to expand and to move to the following phase. That phase of study and knowledge and understanding of the market is absolutely crucial, because typically because it requires time to understand X number of factors, but typically not only the Italian SMEs, but it also happens with mid-caps, and in certain cases also with large multinational companies. That process of understanding the market is not given enough time. So typically you will be having joint ventures, or in most of the cases, in some cases also direct investments, which are made without enough study of the market, without much understanding on the way things work in India, without understanding how the processes of the companies have to be, in some cases, adapted to the needs of the local market, how those processes need to be introduced and somehow being absorbed by the team which is put in place directly in the Indian market. So it is this need of progressive knowledge of local practical elements of working, which sometimes reveals to be a weak point for Italian or international investments in India. Another element which is always very crucial is that I call the Indian market a relation-intensive market, because the presence by managers or directly from the international or foreign investors, Italian in our case, is pretty much needed in the Indian market. There is this need of physical presence, which is absolutely important. And more often than not, this element is not given enough importance. The cases of JVs or subsidiaries of Italian companies that work well are those in which there is an experienced Italian manager, either based directly out of India who regularly comes to the Indian market. And from the other side, where the Indian manager, in case the Indian, the placeholder for the Indian company, for the JVs or the subsidiary is an Indian national, is given enough opportunities to understand the way of working and the mentality of Italy. These, I would say, are the main elements that, from our point of observation, out of our experience, emerge as the most important or the critical elements which are required to make an investment successful. They might sound a little bit blatant and banal, but more often than not, these basic steps are not taken by Italian or international companies. I have then a question for Mr. Ceriati, but probably I can keep it for later on.
As you prefer. You can also ask him now.
I just wanted to check with him if in your investment you availed of any particular incentives related. I believe there has been some export of technology and machinery, and I believe also you have been based out of the state of Maharashtra, if I'm not mistaken. Did you get any particular local incentives by the local government in order to reduce the costs of exporting to India your machinery, if that happened?
Thank you for the question. That's something that we are going to check, but frankly speaking, that was not the driver of our decision. Our plant will be based in Bangalore, in Karnataka, and with our partners, with the D'Andrea's group, we are checking the possibility to have also some incentivization. But frankly speaking, that was not really the driver. The driver really is a strategic one. So mainly the possibility that we think India will have in the next year to be developed, and the request, a big request from our main worldwide customer. These are the main reasons that drove our decision to start the investments in India.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mafioletti and Mr. Ceriati. So, as from the recommendation that Mr. Mafioletti may give, we understand that it's always worth and important to better know the market and explore it in advance, and not just jump into it with an investment, but be a little bit take some precautions in order to start the investment and to make it successful. Thank you. I would like now to pass to Mr. Stefano Pelle, who has held senior management and board member positions for a series of renowned Italian companies operating in India since 1998. Currently, he's acting as the managing director of Ferrero India. I think the company needs no introduction. Mr. Pelle, from you, considering that you have been part of the Indian markets for 2 decades, or even more now, according to you, which are the key changes in the consumer markets of India, pre and post pandemic? And also, I would say, how did you see the trend changing in all these years?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
I'm audible. All right. Okay. Indian consumer. Well, quite a strange beast. So it's a fantastic market to work in. Very, very interesting. Changing every day. It keeps you always on your toes. And of course, the consumer is changing a lot. Has been changing much before the COVID. Let's remember that India has been the fastest growing economy during the last 10 years. So the consumer the great Indian middle class is finally happening. I heard when I first came here over 20 years ago talking about the great Indian middle class. At that moment, they estimated the size of this great Indian middle class of about 200 to 300 million people. That was not true at that moment. Most likely now we are getting over that kind of figure. And so every year there are millions of consumers who come into this great Indian middle class, not only from the urban side, but more and more also from the rural point of view. So the consumer, even before COVID, that since this middle class was expanding, of course, was becoming more conscious of, first of all, of what was happening outside of India. Let's remember that India, till 1991, was a closed subcontinent. Only after 91, India started opening to the external world. Why? Because there was this famous Swadeshi that was a heritage of Gandhiji. And as a reaction to the British colonialism, India had become a self-reliant country. So this had to stop in 91 because the foreign reserves had finished. So only from 91, India really started opening to investment. We know, for instance, that China's economy has grown through FDI already from the 70s onwards, whereas India started this path only from 91 onwards. That means less than 30 years. In this less than 30 years, of course, the consumer, the economy, everything has changed. As I was saying, the consumer is becoming much more conscious of what is there outside. A lot of people have started traveling. A lot of people have become much more sensitive to international brands. There is more and more sensitivity to quality. That was not the case, for instance, when I came here the first time. Though even at that moment, I was with another Italian company, it was Perfetti. So we always thought to give the best of the product to our consumer, but they would even accept an average quality. And in fact, most of the product that were there in the market were of average quality. Now the consumer has become much more, I would say, quality conscious, but at the same time, it's still very price conscious. There is a lot of price sensitivity here in India. Hence, it is even more difficult because now you have to give good quality at an affordable price point. And this is what characterized the Indian market. Now, this was the pre-COVID kind of environment. What has happened after the COVID? Well, first of all, the online has become much bigger than it was. And I can give you a couple of numbers. Online before the COVID was in FMCG something around 2% of the total sales. And after that, there have been some months in which this has gone to over 20%, so 10 times what it used to be earlier. So online has become something extremely important. Then, of course, since online has become very different, then also the way to communicate from companies to consumer has changed completely. Hence, there is a much more emphasis on digital. I remember once again that up to a few years ago, the investment of the big companies were focused on TV. TV used to be the most efficient media, and companies used to invest 98% of their budget in TV. Today, it is something like 60-40, of which this 40, it's mainly digital. There are also other channels, but this non-TV is growing more and more. Apart from that, so more personalized communication and all the rest. Apart from that, I think that with the COVID, the consumer has become much more health and wellness conscious. Hence, and this is to some extent supported also by the Indian government, who's becoming much stricter in terms of regulation on the packaging. The Indian consumer is becoming, and it's still in theory, since there is still a lot to go, but is becoming definitely much more environmental friendly and sensitive to that. And of course, a big issue with the COVID is that, for instance, shared mobility will take a big hit, and hence consumer will go much more towards individual mobility. And to some extent, there is much more which is happening indoor vis-a-vis outdoor. I would say that in a nutshell, this could be the changes that I have seen in the consumer during the last couple of decades.
Thank you, Stefano.
Veronica, I would like to ask Mr. Stefano a question. So essentially, when you say that the online sales are growing in India, so do you believe the future of India lies in e-commerce? Because how I look at it is that the Indian population, a lot of them are based in rural India. So essentially with online sales, you get access to a lot more products to almost every part of India. So do you believe that's where the future of India lies?
Well, it is not only there, for sure, but it's a big change. It's a major change. And the great thing in India is that the internet penetration has gone much more mobile than in other countries. So now there is an estimated number of internet connection in India, which is in the region of 600 million. So that means that almost half of the Indian population is connected to the internet. And most of them are connected through their mobile. So there has been already, it was already something that was certainly that had to grow before the COVID. Now, this has been the occasion of accelerating this trend. Now, is only the big channel which will grow in the future as far as the Indian consumer is concerned? I wouldn't say that is the only channel, because of course the traditional trade is still very, very strong here in India. The moms and pops at the corner shop and all the rest are huge. There are a lot of I would say different easiest way of getting products from the moms and pop around the corner. But certainly online will become bigger and bigger. Once again, to give you, I've already quoted the 2% of India before COVID. At the same time, China was already at something around 20%. Mm-hmm. Now, we have seen going up to 20, even more percent. Will it stay there? Well, certainly it will reach there. Once things get back to the new normal, maybe we might see a decline of this, but then it will pick up again during the next few months. So it will be a big thing, no doubt.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
If I may add to what Stefano, ciao Stefano, buon pomeriggio, to what Stefano said, I think that in particular, as far as made in Italy or Italian brands are concerned, I believe, in my opinion, there will be a sort of integration between the two channels, the brick and mortars, the shops, also because of cost of real estate, especially in Indian major cities, and also because of internal mobility issues. It's not always very easy to move within the Indian big cities. I think there will be a progressive integration between brick and mortar and online marketing and sales, in which probably the brick and mortar, the shop, will become more and more areas of experience in which consumers and stakeholders will be brought in massively through digital promotion. And I think India will be in the next few years a good example for that, for the reasons I just explained before. Cost for real estate, difficulty in moving within the Indian cities, and also the level of penetration that the internet is acquiring in the country. Obviously, we are talking about a target consumer which is very specific, and that perhaps doesn't fully target the middle class that Stefano was calling about, But in the next few years, probably there will be an expansion of the outreach of Italian or made in Italy products, consumer products, also for that kind of market segment.
I see.
Claudio, thanks for the hint. In reality, it is not something that will happen. It's something that is already happening, particularly through Reliance and Geo. They are doing a fantastic job in that, but also in some other ways. There is already a big integration between the small retail and the internet. How does this work? Basically, orders are placed online, and then they get aggregated into some outlets, and the consumer goes there, picks it up, and gets it home. So it's already happening. And for instance, there are also, within some chains, there are some very small outlets which are only conceived as delivery outlets through traffic via internet. They're not the traditional outlets, but they are small outlets who have just a very limited range of products, but at the same time, they're also the pickup point from the internet client. So it is already happening. And you mentioned very well that the integration is something that is bound to go ahead. And we have already seen it even before the COVID era.
Thank you. Thank you also for this view on the consumers side. And I would like to remind our audience that the chat and the Q&A is open and available. If you would like to ask any question, we will address them at the end of the panel during the dedicated Q&A session. I would like now to go back to Mr. Ceriati and focusing again on the pandemic, so the COVID situation that worldwide, unfortunately, we are all challenging. I would like to ask you if COVID had an impact on your business plans in India, on Casappa business plans in India right this year. And if any, which one and what exactly Casappa do in order to counter these difficulties, let's say?
Yes, we have been impacted by the pandemic situation like everyone, but this was not a reason for us to give up. We changed our strategy due to, frankly speaking, not only the pandemic, but also due to the trouble that we found during the way, which pandemic was one. But we continue to be focused on our target, and we moved essentially from our original idea that was to buy a land in India and then to develop, to build our own building. We moved to a rental option in a way to be faster and also in a way to recover some delay. Frankly speaking, we still have a small delay compared to the initial plan, but the impact is minimum, and considering also the actual situation from the market for Casappa, that is mainly related to building and construction field, we think to be able to start our production on time when the market will recover. So we have been continued working during this period, even without the possibility to travel, using a lot web conferencing like we are doing also now. And also thanks to the help to our professional consultant, like Andreas and Partners was one of the main one, we successfully reached the target just a couple of weeks ago to finish the rental contract of a building need to be completed. And so we are really happy to have reached this challenging result despite the COVID situation. I'm also happy to say that we have a very motivated and even motivating group that did and is also doing a great job. Not looking for excuse to delay something, but try to find a way. And even with this unpredictable pandemic situation, we have been successfully reaching these very challenging results. We are just at the beginning, but we are really happy for that. And that's also the reason why I'm really confident that Casappa will be successful in the Indian market too.
Thank you. I think this is a very positive message. I would say that Casappa, because you are bringing as your example, is a very determined company, which is not scared by the situation, and had the ability to adapt to the situations and to the events that may happen. And this, I would say, that should be a characteristic of all the companies that decide to invest, because there is always a plan, but we never know how the plan will be and if it will go on straight and well, or companies should be ready to readapt and change them a little bit. So thank you for your sharing.
Thank you.
I will now go back to Divya again from a legal point of view. I would like to ask you, Divya, if you could share with us some light on the current fears that the investors are facing in the Indian market, and the tools that the companies may have to be protected in this current situation.
Thank you, Veronica. So generally, I would say the overall deal scenario in India has definitely slowed down on account of the pandemic. To give you an example, by a recent study of PricewaterhouseCoopers, the deal movement in India, both in the private equity space and strategic M&A space, has contracted by 14% compared to the first quarter of 2019. Now, essentially, India was one of the first few countries in the world to go in a state of lockdown, which in some form or the other has been constantly extending. This has seriously had an impact on the Indian economy and businesses in India. So essentially, what I see is a lot of fear and insecurity in the minds of investors. So that was also one of our thought processes behind having this panel discussion to begin with, to address such fears, and at the same time, to understand the point of view of several experts in the Indian markets. And it's very, I would say, very well put by Mr. Pelle, where he said that India is a strange beast, and it's an economy which is continuously growing, and that's how I see it as well. And I believe it's an interesting time for investors to acquire assets at a low price. And I'm sure with the growing Indian economy, the investment will definitely reap benefits in the future. Now, to get into the specifics of the law and certain legal issues which investors or companies have been facing in the Indian markets, the first one is in terms of employment laws, because as everyone knows, work from home is now the new normal. And there's no laws in India which deals with employers being able to regulate their employees while they're working from home. So essentially, there has been no precedent in the past, or there has not been a situation like this in the past. So how a lot of our clients are asking these questions, where they want to understand how do they manage their workforce now that the whole focus has shifted. So what we're working on is an agile working policy, and I believe this could be helpful for a lot of companies to include in the HR manual. This is particularly important from a data privacy and confidentiality point of view, because a lot of your information, confidential information, will now be going outside the premises of your offices. So it's extremely critical to be able to protect that. And other than that, it's also obviously important to establish your pay, overtime, etc. with your employees, and establish good code of business code in the company. Now, that being one of the issues, the other issue related to employment law again is in terms of layoff and reduction in salary. So obviously, this has been a tough time for a lot of businesses in India, and in March, when the country went into lockdown, the government of India published a notification where they said that employers should prohibit laying off, should focus on keeping their workforce and not reducing their salaries or laying off their employees. Now, this obviously created a huge burden for a lot of struggling companies. And the company and the challenges that these companies were facing is that how do we go about staying afloat in these difficult times? And this was taken up by a public interest litigation in the Supreme Court of India. And the court intervened, and where they said that it's okay for employees to, the employer should try and work towards the best interest of the employees, but in the event they cannot manage to stay afloat, it's okay for an employer and an employee to negotiate and enter into an amicable discussion in terms of reduction in salary, or if it is a situation of a layoff. And in the event the situation cannot be handled mutually between the parties, then the other approach could be to go to a labor commissioner to solve this issue. So then again, it's a situation which can be handled, and we are definitely working towards amicable negotiations and settlements for our clients with their employees. Now, the last issue that I would like to talk about is force majeure. I think this is a concept which has not been discussed in such depth and length ever before. And that being so, because for those who don't know, force majeure is essentially an event which prevents you, or which could not have been contemplated at the time of entering into a contract, and which prevents you in being able to perform your contractual obligation. Now, the pandemic has an impact in the manufacturing sector, especially for those companies in meeting their for those companies who were willing to supply, who are going to enter into manufacturing contract with their counterparts. And there has been a complete standstill in the supply chain. So what happens when you're in a scenario where you cannot meet your contractual obligation? And that's again a fear which a lot of people are facing in the Indian markets. So essentially, the law on force majeure has not been provided for in the Indian Contract Act. So what people are going for is first looking at their contract and seeing whether there's a provision on force majeure. And if that's the case, then the first step that they are doing is making a notice. In the notice, explaining in specific the reason why there has been a disruption in the supply chain, or there has been a failure in the party being able to perform its contractual obligation, and taking reasonable steps to ensure that the notification is given in a timely manner to cause as little harm or loss as possible to the counterpart. So essentially essentially the point that I want to make is that at this stage, it's important that you enter into active negotiations and discussions with your counterpart. If you need to enter into supplement agreements, or you need to amend your agreement to modify so that you can meet your contractual obligation in the future, it's necessary to do so. Because the law on force majeure, especially in the COVID situation, is something which has not been dealt with by the courts of India in the future. So for us to predict the future of a litigation is honestly really hard at this point in time. So these were the few issues that I wanted to speak about. Thank you, Vero.
Thank you, Divya. I think your suggestions could be of very much support for the companies, especially in order to prevent unpleasant situations and not just cure them, but have a view before what may happen. Thank you. I would like now to go back to Mr. Mafioletti and have a look to the future. In your view, which sectors of the Indian economy can be most promising for the Italian investors after the COVID world, in the post-COVID world, so after the COVID?
Just to take it one quick comment on the difficulties in this period for Italian investors. One of the main criticalities that we are seeing from Italian companies who have started an investment maybe right before the pandemic or during the pandemic is the fact that technicians and managers are not able to move between Italy and India, and that becomes that hampers the possibility of developing the investment as previously planned. So this is one of the major, because we have seen several companies who have put their plans on hold, their investment on hold, right? Because they do not have technicians who can travel between Italy and India. With regards to the sectors where we see most of the traction in the near future, well, the Made in Italy, as far as of our point of observation as the Italian Chambers of Commerce in India, Made in Italy is something that is definitely there to stay in India. So the possibility of having more and more products and brands of Made in Italy products in India is something that we see in the near future as something easily predictable. It has to be seen the timings more than whether it will happen or not. With regards to other sectors, the areas in which the chamber is working and is trying to promote tie-up between Italian and Indian companies, associations and institutions are definitely the construction and infrastructure sector. As far as advanced technologies are concerned, we used to, and we are going to resume in a digital manner. We used to organize several meetings between Italian infrastructure or engineering companies and Indian authorities, be it the National Highway Authority or the Bangalore Development Agency or Chennai Metro, Mumbai Metro, Reliance, and whatever, to present and introduce the technologies and the services offered by the Italian companies. Everything related to manufacturing, smart manufacturing, Industry 4.0, even though it is a concept that still needs to be properly introduced and absorbed by the Indian market, is something that Italy is very strong about. Second largest manufacturing country in Europe and fourth or fifth worldwide. That is something that needs to be promoted and supported. Education is definitely, and skill development is one of the major areas in which we see a lot of potential between India and Italy. As far as consumer goods are concerned, besides the regular and the traditional food and furniture and fashion, cosmetics is one area in which we foresee a good traction in the next years. And everything related to manufacturing as well, as I previously said.
Thank you. So I see that there is a wide range of fields in which our companies may decide to invest in. I will now go for the last question with Mr. Stefano Pelle. The pandemic had a huge impact on the Indian economy, as we know, and not only the Indian one. According to your experience, which business strategies would you propose to the Italian investors that are looking to invest in the Indian market in order to sustain this challenging period?
All right. Being a developing country, the pandemic has clearly had a devastating effect on India. We know that in the quarter from April to June of this year, the GDP went down by 23.9%, which is unheard in India, absolutely unheard in a country where the average growth of GDP was in the region of 7 to 8% for many, many years. So, having said that, has this affected the possibility of India of still be looked at as a very interesting ground for foreign investment? I would say no. I would say definitely no, because if we look at the fundamentals of India before the COVID, and let's consider the COVID as a one-off for the time being, a one-off which of course has changed things, will get us to a new way of working, there's no doubt, but it's still something that will be maybe 3 years down the line, sort of forgotten, though we will still be in a new way of working, in a new reality. Now let's look at the fundamentals, size of the market. India is the second most populous nation in the world, and it's the 5th economy in the world, 3rd in terms of PPP, parity of purchasing power. Growing demand. I just mentioned earlier about the great Indian middle class in huge expansion. Rural markets, untapped potential of rural markets. There are still over 60 to 65% of people in India who live in rural. And a big part of this potential is still untapped. I've already mentioned the internet penetration, both clearly in rural, but also in urban. And then, of course, also what we have seen in terms of policy support and the effort from the government during the last couple of years of getting India on a different track. Well, let's remember that India gained over 30 position, in fact, 37 position in the ease of doing business, which is the World Bank index on how it is easy to do business in a certain country. Having said so, the potential is huge for all the reasons that we have said. So what is the advice that I would give to some possible investor in India? First of all, come to India with a clear commitment for the long term. Don't think to come in India, 2-3 years, make money, go back, make your good profit. It's not going to happen. So long-term commitment. Secondly, persistence. There are a lot of hustle that in spite of the changed environment for doing business, a new investor will still find in India. But you know, if you give up during the first year, then you've lost everything, and then maybe you will not come back here in India. So persistence, and once again, persistence, since there is a mid to long-term result that will come, because once eventually all the initial hassle are overcome, then there is huge potential in front of you. Third, I would say patience. And patience is not an advice that I would give only to investor, but to all those who live and work in India. India is a very special country, is a very special, Indians are very special, needs to be understood. It's a subcontinent, it's not a country actually. There are so many states, so many traditions, so many cultures, so many food. It's something unique. And in order to really succeed here, we have to understand the way Indian people think. And at times you need to be extremely patient. I would say most of the time you need to be extremely patient. These are some short suggestions that I would give to some possible investors here.
Thank you, Stefano. Very precious for the future investors, but I would say also for the actual investors that may just have entered the market. Now I would like to thank everyone for sharing your perspective on the topic. I would like to give a special thanks also to Mr. Claudio Maffioletti, who is now leaving us because he has another institutional commitment. So thank you, Claudio. Thank you very much. We hope to have you again with us in the future.
Thank you. Thank you all for the invite and for the exchange of insights. Thank you very much. Grazie, grazie a tutti.
Thank you. Arrivederci.
Arrivederci, arrivederci.
Arrivederci. Now we have some questions that we received from our audience. I see that there is another colleague of us, Mr. Tommaso Colli, who joined. He is the general manager of PHC PHC Advisory Tax and Accounting. I would like to briefly leave him the floor. He's available for eventual questions on the fiscal and tax point of view, which we did not touch yet. So, Tommaso, just briefly, I would like to ask you if you could share with us what are the peculiarities of the Indian tax regime that a foreign investor that is looking to invest in Indian market should be aware of.
Okay, welcome everyone, and thanks for having me in this short period at the end of this wonderful webinar. I would like very much to connect to what Stefano said earlier about patience, just to make a reference to the fact that the tax system of India is a pretty complex one, and patience is absolutely necessary to try and understand all its peculiarities. There's been, similarly to China, but also to other recent growing and emerging economies, many developments in the last years. Especially when it comes to India, we should consider definitely the big reform in 2017 that introduced the newly formed VAT, the so-called GST, which is levied in many different ways, especially considering the fact that there is like a central GST, but there's also state GST, and there's additionals when it comes also to this kind of tax, of indirect tax. There's peculiarities when it comes to the import GST, whether it is specific goods that have like different duties and different practices for the custom duties and the custom clearance. There's ongoing tax policies regarding incentives, whether it is for startups, for manufacturing firms, for firms engaging in specific sectors, for firms that have a specific capital requirements or specific thresholds of revenues. So I would just say that it is always paramount to be sure to understand the general framework, but also the specific elements when it comes to tax regulation, banking regulations, in order to be sure to comply with everything, but also to take the most out of all the incentives and the new policies that can be that a company can exploit.
Thank you, Tommaso. So let me now ask briefly and quickly, because we are running out of time, one question that we received, and I would like to address it to Mr. Stefano Pelle. Due to the pandemic, the government introduced several new regulations for the manufacturing entities that have to comply with to resume operations. Did you face challenges in complying with these regulations? Did you find them hard to apply, or did they have any impact on your business operation in India?
Well, for sure they had impact, but it was much before any kind of regulation that the government could gradually introduce, that we had already taken the same, because unfortunately the experience of COVID is not only an Indian matter, and so we had lived the same issues in some other countries. Hence we knew what we had to do. And of course there were a number of things that we did, particularly at factory level, particularly at production level, changing layout, introducing some air from outside, scanning the people coming inside, going to get the people with a bus in a certain way, allowing some shift and not some other shift, and so on and so forth. So we were, as I said, complying with this already since the beginning, thanks to the experience acquired from other subsidiaries around the world. But of course, you do have an impact because, for instance, at the end of the line, you can have a certain number of people there. And if this number of people has to be reduced, at the end, maybe the output of the line will go down. So clearly there is an input in terms of output. There is an input in terms of cost because all the PPE equipment, the sanitation, these and that. There is an impact on cost because transportation has to happen in a different way. There is an impact in logistics. So it's part of the increased cost of doing business during this pandemic that we had to face. But of course, we did it, and we managed to eventually go back to a level of business that is very similar to the pre-COVID area already.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing with us your experience. And I know that it could be difficult, but as we said before, we and all the companies need to have the ability to adapt to all this situation and in order to face them in the best way. We have another question for Mr. Ceriati. Sorry, I know that Mr. Pelle probably has to leave in a few minutes. So again, thank you. If you can stay with us also for another 5 minutes, it would be great. Otherwise, please feel free to leave. And thank you very much for joining us. Okay. So we have this question for Mr. Ceriati. We have been hearing about the diversification of global supply chain and India being one of the low-cost countries in China +1 strategy. Being on ground, do you think India has the potential for being a manufacturing base like China, not just for domestic market, but also for the export?
Thank you for this interesting question, because I didn't mention before in my speech, but who made this question got the point. That's exactly our strategy. Not in the really beginning, but in a second time, we really think that India will be a manufacturing plant, not only for the local market, but also for export, absolutely. For 2 reasons mainly. The first one is that, as I mentioned, our main goal in India are the globalized OEM with local production. But in case we supply such name in India, these customers are worldwide based. So the same product could be manufactured and provided even for other plants like US plant of the global customer, for example. And the other reason is that for our knowledge, the Indian market has very fast up and down with the demand during the year. So even using the plant to manufacture products for export for other market can help us to make smooth this variability. And despite we still need to balance all the effort in way to have the right flexibility, this can help also from the manufacturing point, because you know, if we have 1 month plus 100% and the next month minus 80% and up and down like this, it will be difficult from a manufacturing perspective. And so this will help also to balance. So thank you for this question, because really make the point of our strategy of manufacturing in India in the medium term.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think now we are close to the end. I would like to thank everyone, the ambassador who joined us, our esteemed panelists, the audience, and in particular EASTANT Communication and Events who made it happen, so organized this webinar. If you wish to keep in touch with us, please feel free to get in touch, and also if you would like to follow up the discussion. And thanks again. Hopefully we will see you next time. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you.